Thank you very much. Hey, I'm Bingbing Cheng, working with Dr. Rajiv Chopra in Southwest on some ultrasound studies. So today I want to talk about the peritumoral blood-brain barrier opening using focused ultrasound with nanobubbles on the recently developed acoustic feedback control in a glioma rat model. So the system and feedback control algorithm actually have been discussed in an earlier talk yesterday. So here I just give you guys a brief introduction. We're using a single element transducer with a fundamental frequency of 0.5 megahertz. And we adopted a hydrophone with who has the central frequency of 0.75 megahertz to monitor the ultra-harmonic emission of the stimulated nanobubbles during the experiment. The two devices was mounted on neuroscience stereotaxic platform, combined with the brain atlas to achieve targeted blood-brain barrier opening without MR guidance. So during the feedback control, we're mainly looking at ultra-harmonic emissions of the stimulated nanobubbles during the BBB experiment. And during the feedback loop, the ultrasound energy or pressure was adjusted in a real-time manner, trying to maintain that ultra-harmonic emission at the desired level, trying to achieve a more reliable, robust blood-brain barrier opening. Here are some T1-weighted contrast-enhanced images showing us the tumor in both coronal and transverse view. It also shows us the ultrasound exposure pattern. So basically, we applied the ultrasound exposures in a 3x3 grid manner with the 2 millimeter spacing, trying to cover both tumoral and peritumoral region. The exposure at each target is a 10 millisecond burst with 1 Hz pulse repetition frequency and 30 seconds duration on the real-time acoustic feedback control. We're using F98 glioma model, and we implanted the striatum on the rat brain. And here shows some tumor growth evaluation over time. Particularly, we select the 9th day as the treatment day after tumor implantation. So at that day, the tumor diameter can reach 1 to 2 millimeter. So here are some results. From the contrast-enhanced T1-weighted MRI images before and after ultrasound exposure, we can clearly see the tumor and the blood-brain barrier opening area in both coronal and transverse view. From the right column, we can see clearly both the blood-brain barrier opening of the blood-brain barrier of both the tumor and peritumoral region was opened uniformly. This is the representative acoustic signal and the ultrasound pressures as a function of time in a single target. The green line we're looking at is actually the ultra-harmonic emission we monitored over time during the experiment, and the dashed line indicates our target level. So we can see the emission was well maintained around that level. The orange dots we are looking at here is the ultrasound exposure, is the ultrasound pressure adjusted by the system itself during the experiment. In general, the pressure varies from 0.3 to 0.4 megapascal. We also performed a longitudinal immunohistochemistry evaluation, trying to look at the tissue response to the ultrasound exposures with nanobubbles at different time point view. So after a single treatment, we sacrificed the animals at different time points, for example, 6 hours, 24 hours, 3 days, and 7 days. And here we just start looking at some time points, and we're showing some initial findings. The first two columns here is neuin and TUG1 are two proteins specifically expressed by the neurons. And the third column, GFAP, is the biomarker of the astrocytes. So compared with the first row, which are the controls, at 6 hour time point, we're surprising to see that we experienced protein loss for the neurons, but not for the astrocytes. And more interestingly, 3 days after the focused ultrasound exposure with nanobubbles, those proteins are recovering. So which makes the 24-hour time point really interesting. So this might suggest the neurons might experience a transit direction to the ultrasound exposures with nanobubbles. But the underlying mechanism is still, underway. We're open to more discussion, actually, so because we just started looking at this. So in conclusion, it is feasible to open the blood-brain barrier of the both tumoral and peritumoral regions in rat glioma model using focused ultrasound with nanobubbles under acoustic feedback control. And the opening was quite robust and reliable across 40 rats by monitoring the ultra-harmonic emission and adjusting the pressure accordingly throughout the experiment. And under the current conditions, there's no damage observed to either neurons or astrocytes 3 days post-treatment. Okay. And thanks for these funding resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Does the tumor was growing as usual, or the progression was less?
Actually, just as usual.
As usual?
Yeah.
So ultrasound alone didn't do anything against the tumor?
Because we didn't deliver any drugs into it.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, this is just a feasibility study and a safety study.
Okay, so there's a sacrifice pretty early, so you cannot know. Is it?
Actually, we sacrifice them it's a longitudinal study when we're looking at the safety. So we sacrifice them at different time point. And I think our next step is looking at the efficacy, which we're going to deliver any cancer drug into it.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.